May God bless your day and give you a truly wonderful, insightful week ahead. And, honestly, you would deeply need that kind of divine favor if you found yourself standing where the subjects of today's deep dive are standing.
Oh, absolutely.
Because imagine you're staring down this imminent existential war, and your first move isn't, I don't know, forging swords or building walls. It's making a spreadsheet.
Right, a very ancient spreadsheet.
Exactly, a spreadsheet of every single skull in your camp. Because today, we are doing a deep dive into Numbers chapter 1.
Yeah, which on the surface, I mean, it masquerades as this incredibly dry census record.
Like watching paint dry, you might think.
Yeah.
But our mission today is to look at the translation and the cultural notes provided in both the Holman and the NAA study Bibles. And what we want to uncover are the fascinating logistics, the divine promises, and these surprising ancient Hebrew translation quirks hidden in this 3,000-year-old list.
Because it's not just a list of names and numbers.
Right.
It is actually this dramatic, terrifying blueprint of a nation bracing for survival.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the setting here is crucial to understanding the stakes. It's the first day of the second month, in the second year since the Israelites actually left Egypt.
Right, they've been out there a little while.
Yeah, and they are camped in the completely stark wilderness of Sinai, right at the tent of meeting.
Yeah, and that geographical context it's really everything here. Because they are in this harsh, unforgiving, liminal space.
This in-between space.
Exactly. They're no longer slaves in Egypt, but they haven't actually conquered anything yet. And the command that God gives to Moses here to take a census, well, according to the NAA's study notes, it wasn't just some bureaucratic exercise.
No, not at all. The original Hebrew is actually incredibly visceral.
Yes.
It literally translates to lift up the heads or lift up the skulls.
Which is such a striking phrase.
It really is. It changes the whole vibe. Like,
Yeah.
that doesn't sound like a government official knocking on your tent with a clipboard, asking about your dependents for tax purposes.
Right.
It sounds morbid. It sounds like you are tallying people who might very well lose their heads in the near future.
It's deeply physical.
Yeah.
And it points directly to the gravity of what's happening. Because this was a military draft.
Right.
They are staring down an invasion of Canaan, which is this land filled with fortified cities, established professional armies. So this command was strictly to count every male 20 years old and upward who is physically able to go to war.
So it's a battle roster.
Exactly. It's a battle roster.
So we have to completely reframe this entire chapter. You go from thinking, oh, this is just administrative record keeping, to realizing they are sizing up their absolute maximum combat power. Because, their survival is on the line.
Yes, in a matter of weeks or months. But when you really delve into the study notes, this counting process wasn't strictly about practical military logistics.
Right, there were dual purposes here.
Yeah. First, there was a massive psychological operation happening right alongside it. I mean, think about the psychological state of an Israelite at this exact moment in time.
I'd be terrified.
Right. You spent your entire life as an enslaved person in an empire. You've recently escaped. You were living out of a tent in the dirt. And now you're being told you have to go fight professional armies.
The terror would just be paralyzing.
Exactly. So one of the primary mechanisms of this military census was to engineer confidence.
Oh, to build up their morale?
Yes. By literally lining up, tribe by tribe, and numbering their forces aloud, it forced these men to physically look around.
Wow, yeah.
They could physically see the sheer mass of their own army. It was this visual, auditory exercise in unit cohesion.
It's like physical proof of strength. You're looking to your left or looking to your right, and you're seeing thousands of armed men standing with you.
Exactly. It transforms this scattered group of former slaves into a legitimately intimidating force.
But the theological layer to this is arguably even heavier, right? Because this wasn't just about making the men feel brave. This second purpose was about proving a theological point that had been pending for centuries.
Yeah, God was fulfilling his ancient promise to Abraham.
Right.
For generations, the Israelites had carried this promise that his descendants would be as numerous as the sand on the seashore, which is a huge claim, a massive claim. And by demanding this exact count, the leadership is essentially forcing the people to audit God's promise. They are presenting hard data that says, look at the numbers. The promise made centuries ago is being fulfilled right in front of your eyes in this exact desert.
And the numbers they arrive at are just staggering.
Yeah.
When they finish this whole process, the grand total of just the fighting, just the guys 20 and older, is 603,550.
Yeah.
And based on the NWA notes, if you take that baseline and you extrapolate it out to include the women, the children, the elderly.
The whole population.
Yeah, the total population moving through this wilderness would have been roughly 2 million people.
2 million people. Navigating the Sinai Peninsula. I mean, the sheer physical footprint of a camp that size is almost incomprehensible.
Okay, wait. Let's stop right there, because I struggle with that number. I really do.
A lot of people do.
I mean, I want to look at the raw logistics here. Imagine organizing the logistics for the entire population of a major modern city, like Houston, Texas, or Paris.
Right.
But you're stripping away all modern infrastructure. There's no plumbing, there's no grocery store supply chains, no paved roads, and everybody is just camping in a barren wasteland.
It's a logistical nightmare.
It's impossible. I mean, wait, how is it even possible to sustain 2 million people in a desert? They have to move together, find water sources capable of sustaining 2 million humans and all their livestock every single day, manage sanitation. The line of people marching would stretch for dozens, maybe hundreds of miles.
Oh, easily.
My modern logical brain just screams that the logistics of this are completely impossible without a massive, sustained daily miracle just to keep them all from dying of thirst in like a week. Are we absolutely sure about these numbers?
Well, this raises an important question. And honestly, that skepticism you're feeling is exactly what has driven biblical scholars and linguists to debate this specific chapter for centuries.
Okay, so I'm not the only one.
Not at all. The tension you are feeling about the logistics opens the door to a major linguistic controversy that's highlighted in the Holman notes. And it revolves around one specific Hebrew word used repeatedly in these tallies, which is the word elef.
Okay, elef. Is this the hinge that this whole logistical nightmare swings on?
It really is the foundation of the debate. Because for hundreds of years, traditional translators looked at the word elef and rendered it literally as the number 1,000.
Okay.
So if the text records a tribe having 40 elef, the English translation says 40,000 men. But modern linguists argue that in ancient Hebrew, elef actually has a much broader semantic range.
Meaning it could mean other things depending on the context.
Exactly. Depending heavily on context, it can translate to clan, family group, or, and this is the crucial one, a military unit.
Oh, wow. So instead of 40 literal thousands, it could mean 40 clans or like 40 battalions.
Exactly. And if elef means a military unit or a squad, the total number of fighting men plummets from 600,000 down to perhaps just a few thousand, a fraction of the traditional number.
Which immediately solves the logistical nightmare of sustaining 2 million people in the desert.
It completely reframes it.
Hold on, though, because I have to push back on that a little bit.
Sure.
That feels suspiciously convenient. Like, are modern scholars just changing the definition of a word because they're embarrassed by the miraculous or, the impossible nature of the text? It feels a little like we're taking our 21st century skepticism, applying it to an ancient document, and just reverse engineering the translation so it makes logical sense to us today.
And that is a very fair critique. It's exactly why the debate is so heated among scholars. But the Holman notes add another layer here that we have to consider. We have to look at how ancient Near Eastern cultures actually operated when it came to data.
Okay, how so?
Well, we operate in a post-Enlightenment world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We worship literal statistical precision. If an audit says 15,342 people attended an event, and you write down 50,000.
You're lying. You're falsifying data. You'd be fired or sued for fraud.
Exactly. But in ancient cultures, ancient Egypt, Babylon, Assyria, and ancient Israel, they didn't always share our modern obsession with exact literal data. Numbers were frequently used as rhetorical devices.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it was a universally accepted literary technique to stylize or inflate numbers to bring glory to a deity or a king. To their culture, writing down these massive, awe-inspiring figures wasn't a deception at all. It was a way of communicating a deeper theological truth.
So the author is essentially saying, our God is infinitely great, and his blessing on us is immeasurable.
Precisely.
Okay, I see how that shifts the perspective. It's almost like the difference between a strict turnstile ticket count at a stadium versus a concert promoter talking to the press the next day.
It's a great way to put it.
Right, like the turnstile gives you the literal data. Maybe exactly 15,000 people walk through the gates. But the promoter says, we had 30,000 screaming fans blowing the roof off the place. The promoter isn't trying to pass an IRS audit. They're rounding up to emphasize how legendary the concert was.
Exactly. That analogy captures the cultural difference perfectly. The author of Numbers is acting a bit more like the promoter, emphasizing the legendary fulfillment of God's promise to Abraham. To an ancient reader, those massive numbers signaled divine favor. They weren't meant to be a strict demographic spreadsheet.
That makes a lot of sense.
But here's what's really crucial to remember. Regardless of whether you read Aleph as a literal thousand or a military unit, the internal proportions and the structural logic of the census remain exactly the same.
Oh, so the ratios between the tribes don't change.
Right. The text is highly intentional about how these tribes are ranked and organized. And among all these numbers, one tribe deliberately stands out above all the rest, and that's Judah.
Yeah, Judah is the absolute powerhouse here. Even if we scale the numbers down proportionally, they are listed as the largest and most dominant force.
By far, they are the undisputed heavyweight, with 74,600 men listed. But the NAA and Holman notes both emphasize that the significance goes way beyond their head count. The physical positioning of the tribes is where the strategy really emerges.
Because they were arranged in a specific way around the camp, right?
Yes, when you look at the layout of the camp, it was this massive square formation, and Judah was stationed on the east side, facing the rising sun, which in the ancient world was a position of supreme honor and authority.
And when it came time to actually move this massive camp, the mechanics of the march dictated that Judah broke camp first. They were the vanguard. They were the tip of the spear leading the entire nation.
Right. And think about the sociological and psychological impact of that daily reality. Every time the cloud lifted and the trumpets blew, every other tribe watched Judah take the lead.
It reinforces their supremacy visually and physically.
Exactly. And looking ahead in the biblical narrative, this structural positioning is profound theological groundwork, because Judah is the royal lineage. Crucially, this is the tribe that will ultimately produce King David and centuries later, Jesus.
Oh, wow.
So by placing them first in size, first in camp position, and first in the march order, the text is establishing their royal authority long before there is ever even a throne.
It's almost like structural propaganda. You are reading the origin story of a dynasty, and the physical layout of their tents is literally planting the seeds for kings that won't exist for hundreds of years.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so we have this aggressive military force categorized. We have Judah established as the vanguard leading the charge. But if Judah is on the perimeter, forming the tip of the spear, what is happening in the center?
Oh.
Because logically, if you have all these armed men surrounding a camp, the dead center should be the safest, most protected place on earth. But here's where it gets really interesting, because the text indicates the exact opposite.
The center of the camp was actually the most dangerous real estate in the entire wilderness.
Right. And that brings us to the Levite exception. After drafting all these men for war, the text explicitly carves out an exception for one entire group, the tribe of Levi.
Yes.
They are completely barred from the draft. They aren't counted with the rest of the armies.
Which is a fascinating exemption. And both the Holman and NLA notes dig into the why behind this.
Yeah.
Historically, from the Holman notes, we see that the Levites earned this unique position due to their zealous defense of the faith during the infamous golden calf incident.
Right. They drew a line in the sand, defended the faith, and were rewarded with the exclusive privilege of serving the tabernacle.
Exactly.
But looking at the practical and spiritual reality of that reward, from the NLA notes, it feels less like a promotion and more like a highly dangerous assignment.
It was incredibly volatile. We tend to think of the tabernacle as, a large, ornate tent where religious ceremonies happened, like a mobile church. But to the ancient Israelite mind, the tabernacle was the localized, highly concentrated epicenter of God's absolute holiness on earth.
And holiness in this context isn't just about moral purity. It is an active, dangerous force. The best analogy I can think of is that the tabernacle was essentially a nuclear reactor core.
Yes, that's a brilliant way to picture it.
And the Levites are this combination of the Secret Service and hazmat technicians handling highly volatile, sacred material. I mean, yes, it is sacred, but If you mishandle it or approach it incorrectly, the reaction is catastrophic.
That is the exact dynamic. And in fact, look at the physical mechanics of where the Levites lived. They didn't just work in the tabernacle during the day and, commute back to the suburbs at night. The NWA notes point out that they were commanded to physically set up their own tents in a continuous ring immediately surrounding the tabernacle compound.
They were the insulation.
Literally, they had to physically surround the tabernacle to protect the rest of the camp from divine wrath. The text is very clear. The holiness of God was so absolute that if an unauthorized person, whether a foreign invader or just a regular Israelite from another tribe, if they wandered too close or touched the holy items, the resulting clash between human impurity and divine holiness would be fatal.
Wow.
The wrath would break out and consume the camp. So their ultimate job was to absorb that risk.
They were a human blast shield. That completely upends the idea that they got a free pass from the military draft. They aren't dodging the front lines of the war against the Canaanites. They're stationed on the front lines of the spiritual realm. They are standing between their own people and the consuming fire of their own God.
It's an incredible division of labor when you picture it. You have the armed soldiers of Judah and the other tribes forming the outer perimeter, holding swords to keep the surrounding nations at bay. And then you have the Levites forming the inner perimeter, guarding the divine, holding the spiritual boundary to keep the nation grounded to their God.
Because without that divine presence in the center, what are they? Their military strength, their numbers, their vanguard, all of it becomes completely meaningless. If they lose the presence of God, they aren't the chosen nation anymore. They are just another wandering, doomed tribe in the desert.
Exactly. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is why Numbers chapter 1 is so much more than a census spreadsheet of ancient names. It is the origin story of a nation getting organized. They are figuring out their military structure, they are validating their identity through ancient promises, and most importantly, they are placing the divine presence literally at the center of their survival.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? I think it reminds us that behind every seemingly dry statistic or organizational chart, there is a narrative of purpose, of preparation, and what a community truly values most when their backs are against the wall.
Absolutely.
And before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over on your own. Let's go back to that ancient Hebrew word, aleph. If those modern linguists are right, if aleph really meant military units instead of literal thousands, how does that completely rewrite the movie playing in your head?
Oh, it changes everything.
It really does, because instead of picturing a sprawling, chaotic, bloated metropolis of 2 million people slowly lumbering through the dunes, imagine instead a tight-knit, highly mobile tactical force, a lean, focused militia navigating a hostile wilderness against completely impossible odds, entirely dependent on this centralized, radioactive, holy presence they had to physically carry with them.
That's such a vivid image.
Right. It completely shrinks the scale of the population, but somehow it makes their survival and their ultimate victories feel infinitely more extraordinary.
It really does.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this exploration today. We love taking these deep dives into the mechanics of history with you. Until next time, God blesses all of you, and take care.